Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're doing Gaming News Consolidated. This is January 26th through February 1st. And what I do every week is I take a few hours, sometimes a bunch of hours, to go through different news videos, read different articles, and fact check this stuff and take the time to consolidate it all right here for you in a small-ish package. It's usually about an hour, where you can just come here and listen to this every week. Usually these are released on the weekend, and if time doesn't allow with scheduling with work and family and stuff, then I'll release it usually on Monday at the latest. And that's when you guys are listening to this now. So hopefully your start of your week is going well. But we got quite a bit to talk about again. We've got another full list. We're going to be having a new adaptation movie. This will be actually on Resident Evil. We got to talk about... we're going to talk quite a bit about Sony, actually. We're going to also talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Ubisoft. We got some Microsoft. They just had some numbers that came out. We got to talk about Warner Brothers again. Man, they can't stay out of the news. We also got a new game going to PlayStation. That used to be an exclusive. We also even got some information on Ben Studios. They are actually having layoffs. Maybe not the type we expected, though. We also have a survey about where devs are basically porting their projects, and then we also get a little bit of news toward the interior of Grand Theft Auto 6, so and more. That's just pieces of it. That's probably about half. So thanks for tuning in. You can always like, sub, all that jazz, but let's go ahead and get started. So the new Resident Evil reboot movie, this will be currently in the works just for Netflix. As far as we know, this is not going to be in theater. We don't know really too much about it right now, so it is going to take some time, probably a couple or more years, maybe even a little longer than that before we actually see anything. And yeah, it's going to be, I don't know. We did have a Resident Evil series for quite some time, of course, in like the 2000s, and kind of, I think, even to the little bit of 2010s. And, they're kind of campy. They're kind of, like B movies considered today. So we don't know exactly the level or the extent to this movie, but it is an actual movie. This is not a show. And as far as we know, there's no other lineups for this. So we don't know exactly where they're going to start the Resident Evil franchise, but this is supposed to be based off of the video games, not just based off of the world or whatever, or the universe. So yeah, my guess would be like Resident Evil 1 or 2, maybe. That would be a pretty good place to start, honestly. And Capcom, they've been doing the remakes, and so far those have actually been pretty good. So yeah, we'll have to see what they do there. Rise of the Ronin is going to PC. This is going to be March 10th. This was a PlayStation exclusive, but now this is actually going to be going over to PC. So yeah, we are just slowly losing that kind of grind on PlayStation and also on Xbox too, of just more stuff going to more platforms. Everything's just becoming multi-platform. Sony is also having to shake up with their CEOs. This was actually quite surprising. While some of it wasn't surprising, other aspects of it were. So we have Nishino actually taking over Sony Interactive Entertainment. So he's going to be looking over the platform itself, the studio business group. And he's going to be overseeing both of these. Holst will stay where he is within the company. Excuse me. And he's going to continue to be looking over the studio business group, but he's not technically like the CEO anymore. Nishino, in his acceptance speech, basically after his promotion, did call Holst the CEO, but Sony doesn't call him the CEO, calls him the head of studio business. So yeah, pretty interesting in a way. Holst got surpassed by Nishino, who used to be an equal with him. When Ryan left, Nishino and Holst both took over as co-CEOs, and now Nishino has actually taken over all of Sony Interactive Entertainment. So that's really big. And yeah, Holst is going to stay where he is. But man, I think it does kind of show that Holst's ideas lately aren't necessarily doing him any favors with Concord and all of the stuff on Horizon lately and the live service aspects of gaming. He's had a pretty big part in a lot of that. We know, too, that Holst is also going to be working with the adaptions for Sony Pictures. So it makes sense, of course, since he's directly over all of the studios, which there's 11. He's also going to be working directly with Sony Pictures over the adaptions, probably for continuity, to get the universe right, for all of the different types of projects they're going to work on. And this also shows that there's actually going to be probably quite a few different adaptions that we're going to have at Sony Pictures. And it makes sense because it's in-house. You know, it's definitely cheaper. They don't have to deal with third-party licensing or anything like that for the most part. They can just make it in-house. They got the studios already. So, yeah, it's kind of a win-win for them. And again, they have had this kind of like multimedia approach to a lot of their IPs lately, is that they're not just going to be games. They're not just going to be a movie. They're going to try to cross them back and forth. So even later this year, in April, we have Until Dawn movie. My wife and I are going to go see this. And yeah, we'll let you know how it is. I don't know. It will be a little different. So kind of a demotion for Holst in a way, as now he has a new direct boss. But yeah, we'll see how this goes with the company. We also had Vince Zaquera as stepping down as CEO of Sony Pictures. And so, you know, we've had Morbius, excuse me. We've had Morbius, Madam Web, and Craven, and all of those have flopped pretty good. They haven't really made the money that Sony was looking for. Some of them absolutely sucked money dry, and there's just absolutely nothing left. Definitely lost quite a bit of money. So yeah, he's going to be stepping down. He will also be replaced. We also got to see that Yoshida, he is actually the president of Sony, the entire company. He is the top CEO of the company, and he will be also stepping down. Totaki, the financial officer of Sony, will be becoming the CEO, and a lot of these changes are going to be happening April 1st. And yeah, so all of this has been announced. We got about basically 3 months for things to get in order, whatever has to happen there. And then, yeah, we're going to have some massive changes within the company. And I do see these as really big changes. I mean, we're talking about replacing the head of Sony as an entire company. We're having a new head for Sony Interactive Entertainment and also having a new head for Sony Pictures. And when you actually take time to look at each one of these groups, they're actually the biggest profit leaders for the company. And they're all getting replaced. So, yeah, Sony, I think, definitely sees what's going on, probably better than all of us do. And so, yeah, they're making some changes, and it'd be interesting to see what happens. Totaki was the interim president of the company while they were searching for Yoshida. But again, all of these people are being replaced. And yeah, he's just going to completely take over at this point until he either retires or gets replaced himself. All of these three people have been either hired between 2017 and 2019. So it's interesting. It's all roughly around the same period. Many of them, too, are roughly around the same age. And yeah, they're all being replaced. So Ryan was replaced earlier, as I said, by Holst and Noshino, excuse me. But yeah, I was just kind of really shocked by that. I was thinking maybe something would happen with Holst, or maybe they would kind of do a cooperative CEO for the gaming side of things and for PlayStation. But no, we're talking about quite the overhaul. And yeah, these are some pretty big moves. So yeah, they're realizing the damage. They're positioning to fix it. And yeah, they honestly can't keep doing what they're doing. They know that. So yeah, they're going to be focusing on adaptions. They're going to be focusing on smaller budgeted games. And they've canceled 10 live service games so far, which is pretty crazy. The last one we got to hear about was God of War live service game by Blue Point, whatever that was going to be. We also got, let's see, a little bit more information from EA. So they had their earnings call. Their stock dropped pretty sharply, like we're talking 20%, give or take, and quite the unexpected drop. But yeah, they had a pretty big drop in revenue. It was about $600 million. And EA actually blamed UFC, Veilguard, and then also some falling demand in Madden. Now, there will be a Battlefield game. This will probably be coming sometime this year, or at least a beta test. I'm going to see if I can actually become a part of that. And I'm hoping Battlefield is better, but again, we've heard that it's kind of like more of the same, like 2042. They do want to go back to the roots, whatever that means exactly. But it puts a good picture in our minds that love Battlefield. But again, that's what 2042 is supposed to be. So we do know that there is going to be a campaign. There's a campaign team this time. Of course, there's going to be multiplayer, but we also know there's going to be microtransactions and live service elements too. And how deep these are going to run are probably going to be pretty deep, as they're an EA live service game. Their stuff runs pretty deep. We found out on the Madden side that Ultimate Teams is ultimately where they make their money, and they're not making as much as they did. They've seen a 5% decline in microtransactions so far through Ultimate Team. So people aren't liking it. They're not enjoying the digital shopping experience, and I think that's great. It's time to actually get games again instead of constantly having the shopping experience that we grind for and work toward these fancy colors and textures. And it's like, look, that's not really a game. Again, it can be fun. Those, of course, can be in there, and they can also, too, I believe, enhance a game. But for that to be the main staple to just grind for, it really makes a game pretty hollow. And I think a lot of us are thankfully figuring that out. Let's talk about Ubisoft. They're going to be having more layoffs. The Leamington studio is closing. This was a support studio. They worked on Hyperscape, Watchdog Legions, and Frontiers of Pandora, and Skull and Bones. Basically, all of those underperformed pretty severely, some of them. Dusseldorf, Stockholm, and Reflection Studios, they're also having layoffs, and all of these put together, as far as I could tell, equal about 185 employees. Now, again, that is not a lot of employees compared to the tens of thousands that they have under their umbrella of, quote, Ubisoft. So it's not like this is really making a big chunk, but it is horrible that 185 people are losing their jobs basically right at the beginning of the year. And, you know, we've been saying it here on the channel for, 3 years now. 23, 24, and also still for 25, is that we are going to be having continued layoffs. We're going to have studio closures. Again, there's not enough money to support everything going on in the gaming industry, and the companies are figuring that out. And so the layoffs and the closures, they have to happen, which is unfortunate. We're still going to see Assassin's Creed Shadows come out on March 20th. And again, the reviews for that are not very good. We've had some preview reviews, and most of them aren't great. There are some shining elements to the game, but again, there's also some elements that feel like they should kind of be there that are taken away. One even including, which kind of caught me off guard, is that you can't climb all of the buildings and structures. Like, why not? We've been able to do that in all of the other games. Even Mirage, for Pete's sakes. That was a DLC born out of Black Flag. And apparently, too, we're also going to be confirmed now getting a Black Flag remake at some point. So I don't know if that's this year or next year. But yeah, I'm sure more information will be coming out about that. And man, it better be the Black Flag I remember, dude. Otherwise, I'm going to be pretty frustrated. I'm also thinking, too, of taking a look at Shadows when it comes out using Ubisoft Plus. It's $20 or whatever. And I'll maybe test it out for about a month and then kind of give just my initial look and thoughts on it. Also, too, let's take a look at Sonic 3. This was one of the adaptations that we had. It's made $1 billion globally already. It's actually making a ton of money. It kind of had a slow start, but yeah, $1 billion globally is pretty good. Paramount is super happy about this already. They've already announced Sonic 4 for 2027. So they are happy to just reap in the money as quickly as they can, because Section 31 for Star Trek is totally flopped. It is one of the most hated shows on Paramount Plus. And so, yeah, Paramount, they've had so many failures. It's incredible. And again, the content has to be good. And the issue with a lot of subscription services is it's just producing content instead of actually producing quality. And yeah, if they produce quality, I think people would hang on to their subscriptions more. But I watched the Angry Joe show on Section 31, and oh, man, they are angry. Because, yeah, again, these IPs, a lot of them are just getting destroyed. Because, again, these companies are not looking for passion, not looking to do the IP a service. They're just looking for money. And that's ultimately the issue. So, yeah, Sonic 4. Roughly 3 more years. Taking a look at Insomniac, we found out that the president, Ted Price, he was one of the founders of this studio, which is crazy because, I mean, they made like Spyro the Dragon, worked on Crash Bandicoot and Ratchet and Clank. I loved all of those series. He will be retiring after 30 years, which is pretty incredible. He also worked on Resistance. Or maybe there was a support studio for Crash Bandicoot. I can't remember now. I didn't have that part written down. But yeah, Spyro, Resistance, and Ratchet and Clank, they did all work on. The studio veterans will be actually taking over his spot for the time being. It'll be 3 of them. It'll be Schneider, Dizern, I hope I'm saying that correctly, probably not, and Hang. I'm probably saying that wrong too. I apologize. So yeah, the 3 of them are going to be taking over. Again, they've been with the company for quite some time, and they're going to be spearheading kind of the continued direction that they're going. And like, they're working on Intergalactic right now, and there is one other game that they're currently working on. Oh yeah, the Wolverine game. We can probably expect Wolverine, as my guess, is like 2026, and then Intergalactic I think is going to be after that, like 2027 or 28. I still think it'll be a while until we actually see that. Maybe they'll both come out at the same time, but again, we really haven't seen a lot of gameplay out of either of these. Just seen a lot of cinematics, and so they're still going to be a while. But yeah, we just have another one that's been in the industry that has made games that we love, and yeah, we just have another person that's leaving and retiring, and it's kind of crazy because I think most of us would agree the people that are taking over these spots, that are leading these companies and studios, these projects, and these IPs, are generally not doing a good job, which is pretty frustrating to watch. Let's talk about Warner Brothers. The game director, Haddad of Warner Brothers, is also stepping down. So he's been there for 12 years. He'll stay through April for the replacement. But this is, of course, likely because of Suicide Squad and Multiverse. Both of those games put together cost Warner Brothers over $300 million in revenue. So that's money they're not getting back from those projects. And Suicide Squad was roughly 9 years in development. Like, maybe we're even looking at $250 million for Suicide Squad. Like, very, very expensive game. And that isn't the total cost. That's just what I'm expecting they actually lost. We do know that they lost $200 million. And then the next quarter after that, we heard about Multiverse, which again was another loss of $100 million. And both of those I've played, and yeah, they're just shells of a game. They're almost like a tech demo, if I could put it that way. They're really bare bones. Also, Mortal Kombat isn't doing very well either. Their player numbers are definitely suffering. So, yeah, when they're charging for fatalities and for holiday event stuff, every holiday they can think of, what do they expect? Again, they're creating a digital shopping experience, and we hate that on this channel. We actually want them to create video games, experiences for the player, not just grinding for cosmetics and just shopping for stuff. That's pretty frustrating. And it's getting old. It's getting old for a lot of us. That's why Diablo 4 is cratering. That's why Overwatch 2 is cratering. It's why a lot of this stuff is actually going down in the drink, because we're just constantly bombarded with all of these microtransactions. And it couldn't be more frustrating for me and for really a lot of us. And that's why we're not giving them our money. That's why we're having these closures. That's why we're having these layoffs. And finally, that's why these directors and studio heads are leaving, is because they can't either do what they want, or what they are doing isn't making any money. And so they're being basically forced out to leave. Which, yeah, either way, the industry's shifting. It's got some big growing pains. And yeah, this is kind of tough. It's tough to see, though, too. Also, with Warner Brothers, we got to see that they're going to narrow their focus on DC, primarily Batman. We know we have Batman 2. The movie will be coming. It was supposed to come 2026, but now it's going to be 2027. So something's going on there. Something's not quite right, and they're having to delay it another year. They're also going to be focusing on primarily 4 IPs. This is going to be Hogwarts Legacy, Mortal Kombat, DC, which of course, Batman, and then Game of Thrones, which I can't wait for just a mobile live service game of Game of Thrones. That'll just put the cherry on the top for how they've destroyed Game of Thrones ultimately. And or hey, maybe Hogwarts Legacy, you get some little like, free mobile game, because that's absolutely what we all want. And but yeah, these are the four main IPs that they're going to be focusing on for video games. We do know, of course, Hogwarts Legacy did extremely well. I mean, it made over $1 billion for the publisher and the studio. But the publishers, though, they left the studio alone. They let them do their job, do their research, create what they wanted. There wasn't overly a ton of oversight there. But now we know we're getting a Hogwarts 1 director's cut, and we're also getting a Hogwarts Legacy 2 game, and then we're also getting a TV show related somehow and intertwined with Hogwarts Legacy and Harry Potter. So, excuse me, we'll have to see exactly how that all works out, but now that the publisher is definitely focused on making money, I'm not going to hold my breath. I think it's going to absolutely just suck. Again, what are they going to add for the director's cut? They already had a whole bunch of pre-order bonuses and everything else and content packs that you could buy for Hogwarts Legacy. So what else they're going to add, I'm not entirely sure. And then Hogwarts Legacy 2. Hogwarts Legacy was not meant to be a series of video games. It was meant just to be one. And now they're making another one that's also going to be tied in with a TV show. I don't think the story is going to go over too well, honestly. And I'm sure the pressure to actually get these done and finished are pretty high. And so that doesn't bode well either. Y'all can hold your breath if you want. I'm not. I've been burned so many times. I'm just here to give the news. Let's talk about AI. It got another boost. And so we're talking about DeepSeek. This is which is crazy, open source AI program, meaning you can run this locally, no servers, no internet connections with companies or governments or anything. You can completely isolate this and it will completely run on its own. So you basically download a packet and you got all access. There's different types of stuff. There's mobile, which is like the stripped down version that can run on your phone, all the way up to R1 if you have a pretty hefty computers, and everything in between. There's different packets. All you really need is just basically a Chinese phone number, which that's easy enough to get. And then you can basically log into DeepSeek, download the packet, and ta-da, there you go. Or you can also have a Google login, which of course in China they don't allow Google, but they know that Google is used everywhere else. And so you can use your Google login and actually have access to download what type of version you want and download it straight to your computer. And this is honestly really cool because this is actually the first open source AI that we actually have access to in the world. This is not just for citizens like you and me. This is also for any government, any company, anything. So yeah, this is actually really, really interesting. This is set up as a large language model, just like ChatGPT, and DeepSeek can analyze code, write stories for you, poetry, whatever. It can actually do some of these pretty well, even some of them pretty comparable to ChatGPT, which has hundreds of billions behind it by now. And the fact that they basically did this quote for roughly $6 million is pretty embarrassing. So that's honestly kind of shocking. But yeah, pretty interesting. Personally, I'm not going to try it out, but I am going to link down a video explaining DeepSeek some more if you're interested, from some ordinary gamer. He does a great job of keeping up with that kind of stuff and definitely knows a lot more about it too. But yeah, OpenAI and ChatGPT, they have a problem. Because yeah, the billions of dollars they've invested and the other competitors, hundreds of millions for some of these, and again, billions for some of these other competitors. There's so much money that has been dumped into this that when, DeepSeek actually launched, the companies basically cratered with their stock, and NVIDIA being one of them. Again, a lot of their Blackwells and all of that is basically designed and made to work with AI servers and farms to basically make better AI. Yeah, it doesn't look very good when someone can build almost as good for $6 million when you've spent tens of billions. That's pretty horrific. So NVIDIA lost 17% in their stock. They did gain back, or to gain back to zero, they need to gain another 25%, doing the math. and they've already made back about 9-11% so far. So they're well on their way. And I do think certainly that AI is not going anywhere. But now that we actually have a open source model where there's not really any tracking going on. Of course, if you hook up to the Chinese servers, you probably will be tracked. They probably will data mine you to a degree. But I just think it's really interesting that, this has completely flipped everything on its head, because no longer is AI controlled like it used to be. It's now a little bit more free, and it can be used for good and evil, right? So, of course, this AI does have limitations. DeepSeek does, because it is made in China. So, I mean, you talk about the president, there's, of course, some no-nos, or it says, I can't do that, or I can't process that, whatever. It still has some of its own restrictions, but it does have quite the wide range of what it's capable of. And it's pretty interesting. And it thinks right there, locally, on your computer, whatever computer you're using. And of course, the better hardware you have, the faster it can think and process. But yeah, what it spits out, some of it is actually pretty lengthy. And so yeah, it's not a stupid one. It's again, it's somewhat comparable to what ChatGPT is, and in some cases, just as good, which is pretty interesting and kind of scary, especially if you've invested in these companies. Because yeah, now you got some real competition. It's very interesting. So yeah, I'll link that video down below if you're interested. It's been confirmed that Xbox is putting Forza Horizon 5 onto PlayStation. So this is honestly a pretty big deal to many, not to me personally. Forza Horizon 5 has been out for a while. We're probably expecting number 6 around the corner, maybe this year or next year. I wouldn't be too surprised if it's, by 2026. But this too would also be competition on Sony for Gran Turismo 7. Again, they haven't had a game in a few years, and this would be good competition. Gran Turismo 7 unfortunately screwed all of the fans over at PlayStation after a month of release by basically changing how you earn money, how much you make, and even to the point of making some cars incredibly expensive. Again, just getting you to grind to continue to enjoy that digital shopping experience. So yeah, I think competition's good. I think it's always good, pretty much in every single case. So yeah, Horizon 5 was released in 2021. I doubt it's really making any more sales. I doubt it's really making a bunch of more revenue. And they did say earlier, Microsoft did, that they really want to port some games over to PlayStation and to Nintendo or even PC, so that the games and the studios can have new life kind of breathed into them. There can be some more revenue trickling in, and they can have some more support for their studios. So yeah, this is pretty interesting. So yeah, going to other platforms, it's making more money for the publishers and the devs. It's making more money for anyone else that's involved, for third party like Ubisoft with all of the cloud streaming stuff, right? It's going to be making money for them. And then it's also making money on the platforms that it's sold on. So like for Sony, for example, every copy that they sell of Forza Horizon 5, they're going to make roughly like 30-35%, which is pretty dang good. So who's really losing when these games go multi-platform? Personally, I don't think anybody. The only one that's losing are the people that are just deeply connected with their plastic box. And it's just a company, folks. It's just a box. They provide a service. They provide a product. And, there's nothing wrong with that. But we're not special because of our stuff. We're special with what we do with our stuff. And we should remember that. So yeah, this still falls in line with case-by-case basis, which I can't tell you how many times Phil Spencer has actually talked about this at Xbox. But yeah, Horizon 5 is, again, just a case-by-case basis. It's kind of probably lived its longevity on Xbox. And yeah, they're seeing if they can get some more money off of it, honestly, which is a good idea because, well, they don't really have to make any more assets. They just need to make an actual port that functions pretty well. And yeah, some people will probably buy it. Now, of course, they're not all going third party all at once. It's not like we're going to have all Halos, Starfield, and Forza, and everything else, right, porting over all at once. These are going to be spaced out. And again, these will kind of be like a case-by-case basis, but it does provide more games more consistently for everybody. And I think that's great. And I think, too, we'll even see more of this on Switch, too, because they're working on an upscaler that's going to be able to run some of these kind of beefier, tougher games. Some of these bigger AAAs that the Switch 1 couldn't do. Excuse me. And the Switch 2 won't be able to do either, to be honest. At least not very well. But with an upscaler, that's definitely going to be able to help the hardware to be able to run, shaders and ray tracing and draw distance, all of this stuff, even higher frame rates, maybe to some degree for some games. And that's going to be better as well for the Nintendo players. And I think, too, of course, Nintendo actually wants these games over because while they do sell a lot of their IPs, there's only so many that people actually buy. And so they kind of have these droughts in their earnings calls where no one is really buying anything because, again, it's not one of their really big first-party IPs that's coming out. And, of course, they do sell some stuff, and they do sell a lot of consoles. And some of their games definitely do sell a ton, but then a lot of other games just don't really sell much at all on Nintendo Switch, and we actually have sales data to back that up. So I think kind of bringing over more AAA current third-party games over to their platform with their upscaler that they're likely to implement with the Switch 2. Hopefully it'll even be ready at launch. I think that would be great, but we'll have to see come April. It also breathes new life also into the console. So, and it's really better for everybody. So yeah, to the folks that are still complaining about giving no games, I know this comes up every so often in the videos that I'm watching. I think they're still missing the point. Is that Xbox is honestly trying to just engage their players, which isn't just Xbox. It's PC, it's mobile, it's PlayStation, it's Nintendo, it's everybody that basically wants to play video games that has an internet connection. And the console has been holding it back. They agree with that. They acknowledge that. So does everybody else. It's why Xbox is in last place, right? And so for them to actually go after engagement, sales, and focusing on software and not hardware, they're definitely going to be making some money off of this. And again, this is all about, we know that Xbox lost. And so they're changing the game because, of course, they want to survive. It's probably not exactly what they were expecting, maybe even 5 years ago, but this is how things are. And I think the companies should accept it. The publishers certainly are. They're wanting to bring just about all of their games to Xbox like they can, certainly more than there used to be, like Square Enix and Capcom and KT. And, I mean, they're all wanting to get their games over to Xbox, and we're getting IPs we've never had before. And that's pretty awesome. But again, exclusivity, it's not profitable enough right now. Maybe that'll return someday in the future, but I think what's going to happen is that we're going to have a exclusivity of services, or maybe even, accessories or products or other types of services. But games aren't going to be exclusive anymore. Nobody's really making enough money. And I'd say, too, not even Sony. And I got a deep dive that I've completed. I'd still need to get that done. I'll be getting that done sometime later this week, probably toward the weekend. But yeah, it's pretty shocking, actually, when you peel back the layers of the onion and you really see what's going on with Sony. And it's like, oh, yeah, this totally makes sense why they're changing a lot of their CEOs and leadership. They have to. So stay tuned for that. It's a pretty good one. Let's talk some more about Microsoft. So they did have their earnings call. We'll focus on the gaming and Xbox side because, of course, the rest of the side is doing amazing. But the Xbox hardware was down 29% year over year. So what this means is that you take, let's say, quarter 2 of 2024, and you compare with the next quarter, or the same quarter in the next year, like quarter of 2025. So comparing 24 to 25, same quarter, and seeing the differences. And that's what a lot of people are messing up in their videos this week, or over the weekend, saying that, over 3 months, console sales are down 29%. No, that's not the case. And I even saw some guys that have huge channels messing this up. And I just really want to make it clear that this is looking from back 12 months ago and comparing it with today. That's what we're doing. We're taking a block of 3 months. We're looking back 12 months ago, and we're looking at the current block of 3 months in comparison and seeing the changes. So down 29%, that's still nothing to look at. But that, again, that's not over a 3-month period. That's over a 12-month period. But yeah, it makes sense. I mean, they didn't have a refresh. They're moving away from consoles anyway. Again, we just got done talking about the software sales. There's also no deep discounts for the holidays. The deepest one I saw, I think, was $50 or $75, something like that. And we still haven't had a drop in the base price, like MSRP. It's still $500 or $300 or $350, whatever the Series S is. And yeah, it's just static. So yeah, it makes sense that we haven't seen a lot of sales. We also did see more discounts on consoles last year for the holidays, but yeah, not as much this year. We also got to see Game Pass revenue go up 2% year over year, which isn't very much, but it did go up. During the earnings call, they said that PC Game Pass was up 30% year over year. So again, with a grain of salt, the estimates are roughly about 15 million on PC Game Pass. And so, that would put us roughly 19 million to 20 million on Game Pass on PC, which is honestly kind of higher than I thought it would be. But yeah, you could do some extrapolation there, and 2% year over year for the revenue, while all you're really buying is just Game Pass monthly. So if we're seeing a 30% increase in PC, there's maybe more growth in console than we thought, because that's actually a lot of users. The last whole number that we got for console users was about 35 million, according to Sarah Bond in November. So we didn't get any numbers this time. Again, we got percentages, and they do this really often with all of their sales numbers for their earnings call. And the reason they do that is because it sounds better, right, than just actual numbers. But they also made quarterly revenue records with Game Pass, which I thought was pretty interesting. I'm assuming Call of Duty has something to do with this. And then, if they tried Call of Duty, are they still paying for it? Did they just try it for a month or two and like, I'm done. That's enough. Or maybe just try the service. It's possible. I'd be curious how many, subscribers actually stuck around. But again, we don't have that data. There's also a new record of hours streamed, 140 million hours for the quarter, which is crazy. I believe it was for the quarter. So taking the low end of subs, just console, 35 million, dividing that over 140 million hours streamed, we're looking at roughly 4 hours for the quarter for the same time period, which really doesn't sound like a lot. But this is like the most streamed hours that they've actually had. Now, I know probably most of us actually download the games, download the files, whether we have Game Pass or not. But yeah, we just download the files ourselves. We don't deal with streaming or whatever. But the fact that they are seeing an actual uptick in streaming is pretty interesting. And Black Ops 6, again, was a game that you could actually stream. You could also just purchase this and actually stream it. So again, we don't know exactly how much of this is actually through Game Pass and how much of this is just through their streaming network that they're building, which they just released a whole nother pack of games this month, which I forgot to write down, but it was quite a few. It was like 8 or 9 games. But yeah, I would expect the average of streaming to be more than just 4 hours. To give you an idea, Netflix average just in the United States is an average of 87 hours per quarter per 3 months. So that's a heck of a lot more than just 4 hours. But yeah, what are you going to say? Again, most people are probably just down the files and playing it that way. It's definitely the better experience. Sorry for the coughing, folks. Yeah, sickness is just going around, and the show goes on. What can you say? We also got to look at gaming revenue. This was actually down 7% year over year. Again, people are thinking that this is down 7% over just the last 3 months. No, this is 7% the same quarter the previous year. But yeah, 7% is still a pretty good drop. Though the quarter they're referring to was actually the highest profit quarter ever that Xbox has ever had. And this quarter was the second highest they've ever had at $6.6 billion, which that's a ton of money. And the highest quarter was at 7.1 billion. So 6.6 billion is still nothing to sneeze at, with it being the second most gross revenue quarter that they've had. Activision Blizzard did better than they expected, mostly because of Call of Duty probably, and they did mention others, quote unquote, though they didn't say what games those were. Let's see. Oh yeah, I did want to reiterate this too. So yeah, Q1 and Q2 for fiscal year 2025 are the third and second highest revenues ever for Xbox. Again, Xbox has been around for a long time. They've roughly been about 4 billion or so for a high. Some of them are at 5 or 6, but with ramping up Game Pass even before Black Ops 6, they've honestly been ramping up revenue pretty steadily so far, and it's not really showing a sign of slowing down as an average. And yeah, already they're making a ton of money this year in the last 6 months. And yeah, it shows really that Game Pass is working. It also shows when they actually bought Activision Blizzard King, and it's really producing a good amount of money for them. We got to see too that with putting their games on third-party platforms, that just in December, which was basically Black Ops and holiday shopping, and spending, PlayStation was 64% of the revenue just in December, which is pretty wild. Yeah, sorry for all the jumbling around with this, folks, and the coughing. I'm doing my best. Thank you guys for being patient. The current forecast for what they're expecting is low single digits for revenue and for Game Pass subs, but they're not expecting decreases except for in hardware itself. So, again, focusing on software, focusing on subscriptions, and yeah, they're going to continue to expect a decline in hardware. I am curious what we're going to kind of expect to see in 2026, because again, this year is going to be a banger, just January through May for Game Pass games, and then we still have the other 7 months of the year. So, and then if they keep roughly putting out years like this with their first and third party, there's going to be a lot of people that I think are going to start seeing the value, because again, this is just the games that I want to play this year is over $1,000, and want to try. And this is even one of them. This is the Eternal Strands, which I am going to have a initial look of this. This is just basically the gameplay, and Eternal Strands has honestly been a little better than I expected. It's a little slow and a little misleading at the start, but there's definitely a lot more going on there than you initially believe. So it's been a pretty good game. We know, too, that Indiana Jones sold about 4 million copies, and they're going to be selling some more when it comes springtime for PlayStation 5 when it releases over there. Again, there's no real Game Pass numbers, which is pretty frustrating. I'm assuming that they, of course, weren't as good as they were expecting or as high as they wanted, so they're just not necessarily sharing those. But I do expect sometime this year they will actually share, at least Sarah Bond will. She'll share how many subscriptions or subscribers they actually have. So, and right now, my estimate between console and PC, there's a total of about 50 million. That's about 35 million on console and about 15 million on PC. But again, those numbers are relatively old now, and we're going to need some new ones. All right, a couple more pages. Sony is currently also making some good changes for their player base. Excuse me. They're currently doing no PSN requirements for some PC games. which is great. So Spider-Man 2, God of War Ragnarok, and Horizon Remaster, and The Last of Us Part 2 Remaster. These you won't need a PSN. You can just buy the game and just play it, which is so nice. I mean, they should be doing that in the first place. And the whole reason that we know that they're doing basically a PSN requirement is that they want the numbers, they want the stats to go up, they want the data to, they want to be able to try to sell you more stuff. And again, I understand that it's, as a company, but again, it's not necessarily completely real or correct actual stats. Like, they're not organic growth, they're artificial. Because again, they're trying to force people's hand with something else instead of just letting it happen naturally. But again, some of their numbers have been pretty stagnant for quite a long time on PSN. They're really not going up, unlike Xbox. They're just kind of exploding right now, and have been for the last 2 or 3 years. But yeah, this all started with the official release of Spider-Man 2 onto PC, so that's already happened. So yeah, this is effective immediately. And it's honestly really nice to see this. It's not necessarily good for them for what they exactly want, but again, this is something where they're putting the players first. And it's really nice to see that. And yeah, both Sony and Xbox, they need PC, to be honest. I don't think they would make it with what their goals are without PC and the player base there. It's huge compared to everybody else. And yeah, we are going to be getting a Last of Us Part 2 remaster. This is going to be April 2025. That's going to be releasing on PC. So again, we already have that on PlayStation, but this as well is also going to be coming to PC again in April. And again, this is kind of roughly 15 months after initial release on PlayStation 5. Just like Spider-Man, I think that was 14 months. And so we're getting these really small kind of windows now where it's no longer just... it's no longer just producing, 2-3 years and then putting it on PC. Excuse me. Or not at all. We're now actually doing this just in roughly, 12 to 15 months. Sony is also making deals with other countries to actually bring PSN support to them. And so they've added 44 countries to their list, where people can actually buy a PlayStation and log in and actually have services and online connection and all of that. And so now there's only 133 instead of 177 that don't have support still. So even they are going back on this as well, adding more countries to their pool, trying to get more players in. And honestly, yeah, if you ease access, if you make it easier, if you're nice to your potential player base, you're going to get more. It's just simple business. But why they've been fighting it so hard for so long, I have no idea. Good grief, between hiccups and coughing, I'm going to get through this. But yeah, it's been pretty frustrating to see. But yeah, they're having to kind of change their thinking on this now, because again, they need the money. Ultimately, it's follow the money, and that's all that companies really care about. And so, yeah, if you want change, you have to withhold it until you can actually start getting really what you want. And as soon as the masses start doing that, like they have been, whether out of necessity or choice, then, well, there you go. We've got all of these changes in the gaming industry now. Also, Sony is changing some stuff with PlayStation Plus starting on January 2026. They're going to stop adding PlayStation 4 games, except rarely. Every once in a while they will, but mostly it's just going to start becoming PlayStation 5 that they're going to add to the service. So Sony is seeing the shift in digital redemptions and purchases solely just for PlayStation 5 stuff and not as much for PlayStation 4. And so, the last reading we had on their ecosystem was roughly 120 million monthly active users. I think this did go down a tad. I think it's 116 now. And then they've sold probably around 66 million PlayStation 5 consoles by now. So yeah, there's a really good chunk that's active, where the majority is now over at PlayStation 5, so they're going to start supporting that more, which totally makes sense. I'm actually going to have to, I think, restart this over. I'm talking a long time. Well, that's okay. This is a long one. Let's talk about Ben Studios, one of the studios that PlayStation has. They're cutting contractors, and it doesn't sound like a small number. It sounds like it's quite a few of them, maybe even almost all of them. We don't exactly know how many, but after Ben Studios' live service game was canceled, they just don't have much to work on, right? They're basically going to need to lay off the people that they don't have work for. Otherwise, they're just burning money as a company. And so maybe the next game won't actually be live service. And we see, too, with a lot of live service projects that there's a lot of contractors that are involved. A lot of people that are engaged and just have certain work for certain periods of time or whatever until a lot of stuff can be done. Because there's just a lot of groundwork to be done in creating a live service, whether it's creating the cosmetics or the store or the new content or the maps or whatever it is, right? And so, yeah, maybe this is also a sign that their next game is not live service. And I think that would be a pretty wise choice. Sony has said, from Holst in an interview, basically saying that they can't completely get away from live service. They do need live service to actually survive as a company, at least in the gaming sector, and that single-player games don't produce enough income or enough margin, enough net margin. So that's kind of a disappointment. They've gotten so big they have to have live service now. But hopefully they can actually start putting out some better projects, or two, just letting the publisher side of things get out of the way. So many times we see them get in the way and mess things up, and or make things worse, or completely cancel projects when there was something there, but again, it was, quote, too risky. And so we've even seen this with Helldivers 2. It's been a wonderful IP. It's made them a lot of money. It's captured a lot of folks over at PC. And but again, PlayStation can't get out of their own way, slow down some of that momentum, and, well, eventually the service is probably going to die out this year. We'll have to see what this Arrowhead studio does. But yeah, I'm not necessarily holding my breath because we got a lot of other games coming out this year too. And live service just does generally kind of disappear over time. And usually it's, kind of 12 to 14 or 12 to 24 months before a live service is just kind of done. Now, that's what we've been seeing lately. I did want to talk too about GOG on PC. They're adding 2 more classics. I actually bought them tonight. And yeah, these classics run on modern PCs. And this is going to be Dino Crisis 1 and 2. The originals. And if you remember, these are actually only available as exclusives on PC. Or excuse me, on PlayStation. And I don't remember if they're actually on Steam. I might have to take that back. They might actually be on Steam, but they are on the GOG store. And the thing that's great with them is that the GOG store, they have a list of 102 or 105 games now where they are these really old games that don't actually run or play on modern PCs. And so they're retooling them to actually run, which is really cool. And so you can go ahead and support them if you wish. Each game is $10, and or you can get the bundle for $17, which is what I did. And yeah, you get all of the game files, you get the launch packet and everything. And so yeah, you don't need an online connection. You can install everything directly, locally, right onto your computer, and you can just have your games like the old days, which is great. And this also preserves games too, because we don't have to worry about the licensing, we don't have to worry about the online connection, we don't have to worry about servers, we don't have to worry about any of that type of stuff. And it's just nice to see somebody actually caring about preservation for some of the games that have been great. So some time down the line, if things ever get boring this year, I'm going to be showing a little bit of Dino Crisis and getting my butt handed to me. And so, yeah, and, stay tuned for that. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, because I'm sure it's going to be more jump scares than Tomb Raider was. Let's talk about the GDC. So they did another survey. They do these every so often. And they asked the question again to a lot of developer studios, and 3,000 responded back, which is incredible. Basically, what platforms are your current project being made for? And so 80% said PC, 38% said PlayStation 5, 34% said Xbox, 20% said Switch 1, and 8% for Switch 2, which honestly is a little lower than I was expecting. And then Game Pass was 13%, and PlayStation Plus was 9%. But the last time we actually had a survey like this, PC was at 66%, and now we're up to 80%. So there's been a really big shift there. And basically everything is starting to go over to PC. And this is what I think Xbox and PlayStation are seeing, is that this is basically where the money is going, where the devs are going, where the publishing is going. Everything is just dumping into PC, and I'm sure Steam is loving it. Steam isn't making what I would call a ton of money. They didn't even quite make $10 billion last year. But again, they just have an open platform, and it's not like they need to make any of these games. They're just creating the platform, and everybody knows what Steam is. So, yeah, they're doing a wonderful job. Right place, right time, and right leadership making the decisions, and they've benefited heavily. They're basically a forever staple of PC gaming, and they also reach 132 million monthly active users on Steam. And with more people kind of leaving console and some going over to PC, I'm sure that number is growing. Because again, everybody knows what Steam is. It's been around for like 15 years now. It's been around forever. And yeah, 80% of those 3,000 devs are making a game for PC. That's pretty incredible. Of course, it doesn't mean that they're only making a game for PC. They can also be making for other platforms too. But yeah, 80%, man, that is such a huge jump from less than a year ago. I am curious, too, with this, if we'll see a marrying of console and PC. It's been flopped around a little bit, like an Xbox operating system with a Steam OS sometime in the future. People thought Lenovo was kind of going to be it at CES, but no, that wasn't the case. Lenovo has a Steam OS version per Valve's requirement for Steam. To not ever be partnered with anybody else, at least for right now. And then Lenovo has 2 other versions that are just for Xbox and Game Pass. I better wrap this up. I don't think my lungs can take much more. But yeah, we're on our last page. So let's talk about Rockstar and Grand Theft Auto 6. They've confirmed that PlayStation 5 and Xbox will be locked at 30 frames per second. So for some of you where frames is really important, just wait for PC. It'll get there eventually, probably after a year or two. And if it's not CPU locked, we'll see better enhancement with the PlayStation 5 Pro, as it'll give some of that frame FPS boost that we're hoping for, we're looking for. But Rockstar has also said that don't expect 60 frames per second on PlayStation 5 Pro. Also, the base game, this is really interesting, will be sold separately from the multiplayer. Let me say that again. The base game will be sold separately from the multiplayer. The multiplayer will be an additional cost to the game, and that will come out at a later date than launch. So is this where we're getting the $100 from that we've been seeing in some videos? The speculation is like the base game is going to be $70, and then the multiplayer is going to be another $30 on top of that when it releases, as kind of like this multiplayer expansion pack with the casino and everything, because that's really what they want. They made a ton of money from that. So all of this is still a rumor about how much it's going to cost, but it is confirmed from Rockstar themselves that the multiplayer will be separate, and it will also be a separate purchase. So it's kind of a first time we've seen that. Usually if we get campaign and multiplayer, you just get it all in one bundle, but this time we're not actually going to be getting that. And that's pretty interesting. I don't think we've really ever seen that before. At least the first time that I actually remember. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the 50 series graphics cards. They're basically impossible to find. If you've been looking for one, you already know that you basically can't find one. So if you look on Amazon, Newegg, Micro Center, they're all sold out. Even NVIDIA's website, they're actually showing the list that they're available, but as soon as you click on the link and go to the page, it shows that they're sold out. There are a few available if you want to spend a ton of money. These are basically $5,000 Some of the cheaper versions are around 4,000 or 4,500. There's even some that I saw that are like 10 grand. I mean, just unbelievable. People cannot be that hard up for a graphics card. The 4080s and the 4090s, they're also starting to sell out because, again, people were probably expecting to upgrade, and, well, that's not happening. So they're going after the next best thing, which is the high-end 40 series, but these are also pretty highly priced if you can actually find these. The most expensive one I saw was probably around $2,000, $2,500, but a lot of them are somewhere between kind of $1,200 and $1,800. NVIDIA also announced that they are discontinuing the lower end of the 40 series. So again, this is just narrowing the field of what's available in the 50 series and what's being discontinued on the 40 series on the lower end. So yeah, we're just kind of getting this squeezing effect for graphics cards. So yeah, if you can, you may just honestly want to wait, for another year or something. And my suggestion is next time, just buy it before the next 60 series that comes out. Just do yourself a favor and just buy what's available because, yeah, paying the scalpers is just not worth it, unfortunately. So, yeah, it honestly looks like to a degree this is actually fabricated, that there's just not simply enough cards available. Because when we're taking a look, someone, I think it was Vex on his channel, he was taking a look at how many cards were actually shipped to one particular store. I think it was Micro Center in Los Angeles, which there's an estimate of like 3 million gamers there for PC. And so, of course, they want a graphics card. And there were only like 300 units shipped. Not enough, right? Of course, there's multiple stores, there's multiple brands, but like you get the idea is that a couple of hundred or 300 is not enough. Like they are definitely going to be selling out before you can even click the button. And then you got scalpers too on top of that, so they don't even care about the card. They just want to make some money, which I don't blame them necessarily for how horrible the times are right now. But it is pretty frustrating when the scalpers are constantly just buying everything that is in even remote demand and just screwing everybody else over that actually wants to buy something and just enjoy it. But yeah, NVIDIA, if they wanted to, they could have made more. They could have sourced more production ahead of time. They could have coordinated better, locked down some materials. I mean, they could have done something to actually produce more, I believe, than what they did. Some are wondering if this is to make the 50 series actually seem more desirable, since they're out of stock everywhere. We know that basically, hey, if it's out of stock, maybe it kind of creates more demand, more artificial demand for the product, and then they'll release a bigger batch, and everyone will flock and, basically buy them right away and make it go out of stock again. So it's possible. We know a lot of people weren't really too happy with all of the AI stuff, because some of these beefier graphics cards, like the 70 and the 80, weren't as beefy as we were thinking they should be. And so we were kind of expecting a little bit more raw power, but that's not necessarily what we got, which is frustrating. And that was pretty unpopular. Again, you can check out Vex's channel. He's taken some time to talk about NVIDIA. Also, Some Ordinary Gamer, that's another guy you can check out. He's also taken some time to talk about the 50 series. And, of course, yeah, the scalpers are out there, too, just making a mess. But, yeah, that's the gaming news. Thanks for tuning in. I better hop off before I totally lose my voice. And hopefully you guys are doing well. You can always like and sub, all that jazz. If you want to see everything first, you can sub over at Twitch. I don't have a regular schedule. I have a little bit more of a staggered regular schedule on YouTube. But again, things are not overly regular. You'll have swaths of more content and kind of more scarce content depending on what's going on in my life at the time. But regardless, my channel isn't going anywhere. So there's always going to be something to watch, whether it's playthroughs, co-ops, gaming news, or deep dives. You can find it all right here, or even initial looks. What you're seeing right now is coming shortly later this week. And with that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.